right, that was not as lively as I thought it was gonna be. Oh, Mozart really drags, or Beethoven really drags sometimes. Welcome to the show, everybody. Like, I'm not sitting through 10 more minutes of that. Incidentally, the song is 11 minutes long.
Why would you pick a song that's 11 minutes long?
I don't know. I picked it because of the story I was telling off air about what Ode to Joy is, and thought it'd be funny, and then I realized, like, this would be boring as shit. Like, it starts with a bang, right? Like, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. And then all of a sudden it's like, now let me bore you to tears. Welcome to the show.
Play the version from Clockwork Orange.
There's a version from Clockwork Orange?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Classic scene, man.
Hello, everybody. Is the chat working? The chat is working. Oh, there's always something. Oh, I didn't even shut it off yet. Fuck, I'll play. I was like, what's that sound? Welcome back to another Friday happy hour as I adjust to new earbuds that I'm trying out, and I don't think I like them. My name is Danny Kotsky, and I'm joined by Jake, Dev, Brandon, who the hell knows where he is. I doubt his devotion to Sparkle Motion. And of course,
he's just going off the labs. He's just like memory labs. Dev, Brandon, oh shit, he's not here. Let me make up something.
And of course, we have our illustrious guest. I didn't ask you how to pronounce it, but I'm going to guess Bill Sempf.
Yes.
Yay! I was like, tell me the M or something in there is silent. Welcome to the show, my friend. Welcome to another Friday. We are Trimark Security. We got a bunch of stuff. We got a new blog up on hub.trimarksecurity.com. And, you know, come check out our Twitter, too. It's kind of fun. Twitter.
I wrote that one.
What's that? You wrote that one?
Yeah. I think so.
We are... God, so... It's a whole nother week. This week has been a very long month. I had energy up until like 10 minutes ago, and then I stepped out of the room for 1 second, and I realized, like, why do my eyes feel like they're closing?
Was that penne pasta that you had, man?
Dude, you know what? I felt good until I had that. I think it's supposedly one of those fit meal service things. It doesn't tell you that it's gonna lay you low. Of course, I also worked out today, so.
Jake, do your dog has a cone of shame on them?
And the cat's cat's bullying him.
Yeah.
Like, haha.
No, she had a little surgery, had a wart removed from her eye, has some stitches, and so they didn't want her.
I like how the cat's just like, you have to wear this. I'm gonna rub myself on it just to show you I can.
This is not
look the size of that cat. It's like a mini dog.
It's pretty thick.
Yeah, he's a thick boy. Yeah, he's about 15 pounds.
His arm coloring looks like he has tattoos.
He does. Yeah, we give him tattoos.
Ooh, chunky boy. All right, let's get to it.
Winter too. Yeah.
We have a highly technical.
Danny.
What? Shut up, Dev. I don't even know what you're saying. Just shut up. Shut your whore mouth.
Ooh, chunky boy. We're gonna have to save that for the highlights later. Mark the time.
Oh, Bill, good afternoon. How are you, sir?
Very well, thank you. And yourself?
Oh, I'm fine, I guess. My enemies haven't bled me quite dry yet, so it's fine. You, sir, have quite the illustrious career in application security, and this is actually, oh my God, there's that penne coming. Jesus, I can't even have a straight conversation right now. It's making me tired and it's making me gassy. Anyway, well, on the upside to all this, Bill is a frequent part of our chat. Like, he has seen this before. It's not like we're asking some poor schmuck of a guest to come in and deal with this ass.
And he still showed up. He still showed up.
Episode. Yeah.
And deal with this ass hattery by delinquents like us. Can you believe our business does any money with idiots like us working here? But application security, big thing. I know jack about it, so this is going to be a learning experience for me. We were just talking today, Bill. Well, first of all, what do you do, and how'd you get into it?
Well, what I do mostly is advise developers on how better to write secure code. So a big part of that ends up being doing vulnerability analysis of either static code, looking at code and making recommendations, or triaging scanners, that have results, or doing dynamic testing, manual dynamic testing of applications to find vulnerabilities, and then advising the developers on how better to write better code. That's what I spend the vast majority of my time doing.
Why? What tickles your particular? We haven't had a lot of AppSec people on. I don't like. I'm pretty sure I know a lot of AppSec people, but I like my people I become friends with. We don't sit there and talk about this stuff all day. And I know that. What's that?
I think everybody should. You should sit around and talk about it all day. I mean, let's face facts, guys. All the fancy boxes and blinky things that everybody uses, they all run code. Someone wrote that code.
Well, maybe we should talk about it more, Bill, because we were looking at this before the show. This is even before you came on. So my first, I've only been to one OWASP meeting back in like 2016. I went to some random OWASP meeting up in Boston, and haven't been back to one since. But I just casually looked at like the OWASP top 10 in 2016 and the OWASP top 10 as of last year, and maybe we should talk about it more because half of them are the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even Dev, you looked further back, right? You looked further back, like 2006 or something, didn't you?
Yeah, 2004. I mean, you got to remember, you got to understand that what the OWASP top 10 is doing is just giving you kind of a broad, like, hey, this is what's going on in the world of security when it comes to web applications. These are things we're seeing. That's all it does.
Yeah. They literally send us a big spreadsheet, and we go through all the reports we did over the year and count up how many of this we found, how many of that we found, how many of the other we found, and then we enter them all in the spreadsheet. We send them all in, and the team that builds it, they munge all of the I'm sorry, man, I can't stop watching your cat bully your dog. It's just killing me. They munge it into a list, an ordered list, and then we sit and fight about it for 6 months on mailing lists, and then somebody writes it, and that's really what it comes down to. So I mean, there was a couple of big shakeups even not too long ago where it was kind of figured out that some of the people that were involved were kind of leaning things in directions that maybe their company's products might be better at solving or whatever. And that was a huge big deal. So OWASP is supposed to be vendor neutral, but it's almost impossible today. When OWASP was created, it was spawned, it was that was still doable, but today there's no chance to make
How dare them put their company and put their name. But speaking about that, I noticed Active Directory is not on this list. We should probably add that to this list.
Exactly. See, that's exactly what happened. Yes. And it is sort of, because access control is always a big topic. And that's really, like we were talking about before the show, that's really where development and security as a skill set of its own, one of the places it meets, it meets there. It meets in encoding, it meets in encryption. There's a couple of spaces where it definitely, on this big hexagon, it definitely meets. Actually, that's a really good image. I need to add that to a presentation one day. Hang on, I'm gonna make a note here so I remember.
Yeah, because he's talking about an image, but we have no idea what image.
Yeah, I know.
It's like
I don't have
hand
a whiteboard. I need a whiteboard behind me is what I need.
It's like the Minority, like he's using his hands to make images in the air that only he can see. And
I totally, I'm totally one of those too.
Well, it's like
I've had more than one client tell me, Bill, we can't understand what you're saying because your video's turned off. And like, oh, sorry, let me turn my camera on.
Well, it's kind of like there's like the threat hunting pyramid and the AppSec hexagon.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome, marketing people. Go ahead, run with that now.
I'm stealing that one. Yeah.
Go right ahead. But before I know it, the next webcast I run across it's gonna have an AppSec hexagon on it, and no credit to me. So why AppSec? What tickled your brain so much that I'm good? Maybe it's on a limb here to say you enjoy doing this. The longer I am in this industry, the less enjoyment comes into it. But why did you enjoy it this much? Why did you make it this long a part of your career?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. My background goes way back. Obviously, I've got more than my fair share of the gray hairs. I've been around for quite a while, and I think we're all suffering from that similar inclination. If I go way back into the BBS days, and to be honest, my very first, if ever, semi-viral claim to fame is I configured an Apple II to run 2 modem cards because we had 2 phone lines in our house. So my dad could be on CompuServe and my mom could still use the phone to like talk to people, gosh, not that anybody ever does that anymore. But still, and before they got home from work, I would plug both of them into two modems, plug the app into 2 modems and log into 2 BBSs. And I had scripts that were written in BASIC that would run to log into like Navarone Junction and Eagle's Nest and these old BBSs, and download the files from the file download and upload anything else that I had. It was, I mean, we're talking when I was 12, 14 years old. Okay. So they weren't exactly, mind-blowingly complicated scripts, but it was enough that I ended up with a Nomiker Hydra because I had heads everywhere. People would say they would log into a BBS, see me on, log into a different BBS, see me on there too, and be like, how are you everywhere? Well, I'm not everywhere. I'm only on 2 at a time, but it looked that you gotta think, you gotta sit and think like it's the 80s. That wasn't something you saw in the 80s. I've been developing for that long. I mean, that's how long I've been doing stuff. I've written all kinds of weird things. But where the security piece starts, I was at OSU as a student, and I coded up in C, weirdly. So don't ask me to write C now, please don't ask me. But then it was a little bit more fluid. A integration package that allowed me to chat with my at the time girlfriend at Miami University, who was on the BitNet, and we were on the internet. We were, the ARPANET, and they didn't speak the same language, but I made them do that so that we could sit and chat while we sat in the computer labs of our relative areas. And in order to do that, I had to hard code credentials someplace. And my SysOp, Sandy Wombold, who is still active out there, she's a deployment DevOps for Google, I think now, which is not a surprise. She's a freaking genius. Caught me, figured out what I was doing, and called me up to her office and explained to me that you can't share credentials. I'm like, but nobody can see it but me. And she goes, but you're wrong, and explained to me why. And I went, maybe there's more to this keeping the bad guys out than I think of. And that just led to one thing another. So I was really early on with the internet. I helped move OSU from Gopher script to HTML when HTML was brand new. This was the 92, 93 time frame. So the Oasis system, which I don't think they actually have anymore, but they might. I'm sure it's been renovated many times since ours was all written using Common Gateway Interface and C code, and it was totally different. But I'm one of the few people who knows Gopher script or knew Gopher script, and because I helped them convert it from one to another just as a student employee. So I was an internet guy way early on. So when the really super early versions of angel investors started showing up, like in the 95 timeframe, looking at this internet thing and thinking maybe it might be a big deal. One of them was here in town. They started a company called Jade Inc. that more or less wanted to build products on the internet. And I wrote one of the first malls on the internet. It's called Marrakesh Mall, written in Cold Fusion over Oracle.
Cold Fusion. Oh my God.
You can go look at the
You can go look at the Internet Archive. It dates back like 96. You can go look at my old JavaScript code. Oh boy, somebody's looking. I get all hands on keyboard. I know that look. But it's americanexmall.com. And so I did that. And also here in town, just in Grove City, this little burg in the corner of Franklin County, I met this guy who was an ex AT&T long linesman. He was on disability retirement because he'd gotten hit by a car, honestly, while he was in his truck. Messed up his back real bad. But anyway, he started an internet service provider, and he knew PCs real well. So he had like all the dentists and doctors and lawyers and stuff in town. He built their PCs for them, managed their internal networks, and then eventually started providing them with the option to build a web page, which I wrote all of. I would sit and code all their web pages back in the day when a normal programmer could write a web page. Now, of course, you need to have like 3 degrees in graphic design. Well, one of the sites we had was grovecity.com. And grovecity.com was just written in active server pages over Access, Microsoft Access as a backend database. And I got a phone call from Fred Bollinger, the guy who owned TMCI, one Saturday afternoon. Hey, Bill, NS2, which was the web server, was also the name server, thus the NS2 number, is completely full. The hard drive's completely full, and I don't know why. I was like, oh, well, I did what you can't do anymore, which is got in my car, drove 15 minutes over to his house, and logged directly into the machine. Nobody can do that anymore, obviously, because we're all just storing stuff, letting Google and Microsoft store all our stuff for us. Somebody had discovered a SQL injection flaw in grovecity.com and had filled the server with German porn. So that was my weekend. It was rebuilding that. Well, I mean, then there was the next weekend. Which, no, kidding. Somebody had to watch it, all right. I mean, come on. No, I'm kidding.
Confirm what it was. I get it. Yeah.
But that's what those hard drives in the background is all full of right now. Now you know.
So that's when the lessons I learned at OSU under Sandy really came home to roost. I was like, oh, there really are bad people and they really are doing bad things. But I still made my living mostly in development until, I don't know what, 2010, 2008 maybe. It's probably, well, I don't know how many people are chatting, but there might be somebody who remembers. It must have been around 2008 because it was when I started on Twitter, and I was looking for both developer communities and InfoSec communities. And so I did all kinds of enterprise work, including Active Directory type stuff. I was on the design team that designed the OHID, which is our statewide identity system that has this massive authorization scheme. So you can, you log in with one ID, and if you're like a senior care specialist or something, you can see certain records, see their records, but nobody else's records. Then you know what I mean? It's really complicated. The design of it was so confusing and big. We called it the Borg. There's this big cube of authorization specifics, and fine grained auth for that. And so I just kept doing the developers version of being the security guy on the developer team, right? So I was always the one who got called up to write the auth stuff. I was always the one who got called up to write the encryption stuff. I was always the right person that called up to make sure encoding was right, going back and forth. Mm-hmm. And eventually, long story short, I ended up in a long story long. I've been talking for how long? I ended up writing Windows 8 apps. Remember that, the Metro UI, for Microsoft. But when they were trying to get Windows 8 like out there, what they do is they kind of fund development of applications using their framework. They provide support for big companies. So like I worked on American Airlines Windows 8 app and FedEx's Windows 8 app and who else? Some other places. Basically working the service tier, which is what I I mean, as a developer, that's where I spent most of my time writing web services. And by the end of that, I was so burned out because you have not seen misery until you've tried to write for the .NET framework in JavaScript. It is like the worst possible thing that anyone could ever come up with.
Yeah, because at that
And
time they were using what, SOAP? They were using SOAP at their back end protocol.
So for the protocol, but
Yeah.
JavaScript was what Metro was built. You could do it in C# eventually, but when we were writing it, it was all JavaScript on .NET. So the .NET framework but JavaScript was the language, and it
Oh,
was horrible because JavaScript is Satan's spawn as far as what any these. I'm sorry, I'm going to piss off a lot of people. Anybody who's actually spent time programming in an actual programming language understands how horrible JavaScript is. They literally made it up as they went along, and you could tell. And the .NET framework they did not make up as they went along. It's very, very well designed, and even back then, but anyway, I was completely burnt out on development, so I reached out to Jim Manico, actually, of all people, who I'd met as part of OWASP, and said, dude, you know anybody who needs like some security dev work or something, because I gotta get out of this Windows 8 thing, it's killing me. And he said, well, there's this place out in California that they said they need some security dev work done. And so I called. It was AppSec Consulting out of California, who got bought by somebody, and then they got bought by somebody. I don't even know where everybody is now. They did have some development work, but I'd need to go to San Jose for like 4 months, and my wife was 7 months pregnant with our son.
so that worked out.
So it didn't really, so it all worked out. Yeah. So I was like, I can't really do that. He goes, well, in the meantime, why don't you do some testing? And I was like, I've done testing before, whatever. But they had a structure. They had like a test plan for their vulnerability assessments. And I'd never seen anything quite like that before. So I learned from them just everything about vulnerability assessment. And I just love it. I love the effort of finding the problems and the puzzles that are in there, figuring out if they're exploitable, and then most importantly, writing actionable remediation advice that developers can use that day. And I'm okay at it because I got a bit of a reputation. And so I've been point. I think my little name, I can't see my little name tag on the screen I'm looking at, but my little name tag, I think, says Point Products of Innovative Technologies. It's our company. Myself and my wife own it, Gabrielle. And she, I'd been independent for a long time. I just stayed independent, and that's what I have. So now I have a desk full of client laptops, and I do vulnerability assessment for them. And advisor, I sit between the InfoSec team and the developer team for companies.
So when it comes to
I love it.
So I've got a question about that. When it comes to vulnerability testing, there's two mindsets really out there. There's a mindset of you can't see the code, just look at the application and tell us what's wrong. And others where they're like, nope, go ahead, look at the code, review it, kind of tunnel or kind of like laser focus on the areas you think will be more critical.
Yeah,
I'm just
the gray box
curious.
and the white box.
Yeah.
And I have different people who want me to do different things, and I do both. They're both very useful. I mean, the fact is, the attacker hopefully doesn't have the code. So if you genuinely want to know what you see what the attacker sees. Like I have one client in particular that literally, because of certain regulatory bodies might be asking them certain questions, trying to say this without including anybody into what I might be talking about, which is not my strong suit. They said, well, we want to just test it like an attacker would, literally an attacker. You guys know, talking to the team that's testing, you guys know way too much about us. How do we test it like an attacker? And so we just do that. Don't give us credits. Let us start from there. It takes a long time. I mean, that's red teaming, right? Really,
Yeah.
Takes a long time, but that's what the attackers do. They have all the time in the world, and they just keep going until they find a way in. And oftentimes, obviously, they use social engineering and other tools like that, phishing, and well, phishing is social engineering, I guess, to get there. But if the scope's that broad, then that's what the attackers will see. So you may as well go about it that way. And I do that too, you know. But honestly, most of the time I spent gray box hand in hand with the security team and the dev team. I'm given credentials. Yes, I do look at the application as a non-authenticated user first, just to do reconnaissance and whatnot. But because that's kind of the difference between a critical and a high a lot of times, right? Is if there's an unauthenticated injection versus a authenticated injection. Well, somebody must at least pass the bar of having the creds, then okay, maybe that's a high severity. But if it's any human out there or any machine out there can just go and run this injection, then that's probably critical.
Do you prefer
Probably
one over the
critical.
other, or is just kind of do whatever?
Doesn't matter.
No, whatever.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I really appreciate people who genuinely red team. I've spent a fair amount of time with a group, well, formerly out of North Carolina. They've kind of spread out a little bit, called FAIL, the FAIL Association of Lock Sport Enthusiasts, who are actually all red teamers for a living. And they're the ones who like help me with Nmap when I need it, because I'm not a network guy, for the record. I don't, I mean, I know how the internet works. Yay. But I'm not, I don't know I'm not a super detailed network person. So
How do you, can I ask?
Yeah, please.
How do you do AppSec and not be a network person?
Well, I'm talking about like configuration of WANs and LANs
Oh, okay.
and stuff.
Yeah.
That kind of
That question was not a guy.
Yeah, there's a
question comes
model
from
with 7 different layers in there. I forgot what it's called. It's some weird thing. And application is kind of separated from networking there.
Yeah, and it's near the top and network's near the bottom. And
that was the most that comes from, that wasn't like an accusatory or anything. That was from a layman who used to do networking and lived in it for so long that I think everything exists inside it, that like I think everybody must know or need to know how to do that shit. So that was the nature of the question. That wasn't like, hey, one second, I caught you. It was fucking, I was just curious.
No, you didn't sound like a complete asshole there.
Thank you.
Don't worry.
As long as I didn't sound like you, I know I'm not gonna be a complete asshole.
So, Mike, the other question I have for you is, let's say you're a company out there, you have a somewhat enterprise level application, maybe it's 100,000 users, whatever the case is, and they have no AppSec whatsoever at this juncture. What advice would you give to them on to like what to do? What are the first 5 steps you need to start looking at, or move towards to get in a better and secure application?
That's really a very, very good question, and requires an answer longer than the time we've got here for sure. Because it heavily depends, in my experience, on the company's culture. That's where you start to bump into the culture side of things, really. And how communicative things are. For instance, I have one particular client that has a very open, everybody happy all the time, t-shirts to work kind of, tater tots for lunch at the cafeteria and that whole thing. I think I just already gave away too much for those who know. The problem is that they've got their developers are working on 5 different development platforms, because everyone's just, oh, peace to all, and all comers come, and yes, oh, you want to use that sounds great. And so they end up using every shiny nickel out there. I mean, loading for instance, one of those 100,000 user enterprise applications that they have, you go to just type in the URL and press enter, it makes 796 HTTP requests.
Yeah,
no activity on the site at all, just press enter. And it's because of all the shiny nickels they have tacked into their application. You're in trouble when you're working in burps monitor as big as mine, and the entire left-hand fills up just from loading the homepage. The targets column. That's the thing. So
CDN.
they that provides an interesting challenge from the application security perspective. Some places are much more buttoned down. But no matter what, I mean, what you need to start with a little bit of training. If they legitimately have no AppSec program at all, they have InfoSec people that are in charge of things like the identities and the network stack and stuff like that, and encryption, like encryption keys, and that's all InfoSec. And then they have developers that sit in a little cave by themselves, and they're fed mushrooms and hit with vines on a regular basis. Then the first thing you need to do is get everybody together, get some training, find the developer champions on the security team and security champions on the developer team. Always in a place big enough that they'll have 100,000 user system, you'll find a couple of people who have been to, a B-Sides or DerbyCon back in the day when it still existed, or any one of those hackers teaching hackers. One of those, they heard about it and they knew somebody was going, and they're like, I'll give it a try. And they go in and they're like, whoa, I had no idea this was a whole big thing. The security is like a real deal. And so you take those people and then you take the InfoSec people that like maybe have done some coding, and you put them together and you say, okay, you guys are now the ad hoc informal AppSec team. Let's get you up to speed at a certain tier, and then we'll start testing. And that's when you get the source code, run it through it. If we're lucky enough that we have funding and we can spin up something like Veracode, great. If not, there's open source alternatives. Get some static scanning, deal with the 7 trillion false positives, look for the patterns, and then start there. Start with those patterns. Take that team you've built of the champions and look at those patterns and say, okay, what can we do to start to fix these patterns we see in the source code? And there's no encoding anywhere. That's probably going to come back and get you when we go to dynamic testing. So why don't we talk about encoding and figure out a standard? And then that's what you end up with. The end result of this ends up to be a developer standard. And I actually have a document that I've built over the years that's generic for platform. It doesn't have any platform specifics. It's just, always encode your outputs. Always validate your inputs. And then I will go in on a client-by-client basis and add in the specifics for whatever platform they happen to use, if they're a Spring place or a .NET place or whatever. And then you that's something you can wave around at meetings, and say, no, this is part of our coding standard. This is just like tabs and spaces, only it'll prevent the bad guys from breaking in and not just you guys from punching each other. So that's kind of the take that I bring, and I've done that twice, all the way from scratch now, with companies, 3 times, I guess technically 3 times, and all 3 times it's ended up real well. Just that pattern that do a presentation. I often start with lunch and learn. I did actually all 3 of the places I'm thinking of started with a lunch and learn, and I go and stand up in front of them and they eat sandwiches and I break into a couple of things and they go, holy, how'd you do that? And I go, well, actually it was really easy. Let me show you, and pull up some tools, and they go, okay, I want more of that, please, because that's cool. And because everyone likes to break into, it's like the lockpicking thing, right? Why do security people like lockpicking? You like lockpicking because you get to break into something that doesn't actually send you to jail. Unless you're breaking into your neighbor's door. Yeah. But if you just got, a lock sitting around, and then you can do bad things in a not bad way. And that's the same thing is true of practicing an application security. It's like, oh, wow, you can really easily break into it. You'd be amazed how many developers don't even really understand how much power pressing F12 on your keyboard gives you. And this is the developers out here.
Wait, I thought the
there's a whole
made
mayor
that
who's
illegal
trying
for
to
hacking.
Okay,
wasn't a mayor who's trying to arrest people or something if you put F12? Because that's
F12 is not a crime.
I remember that. Yes, that's right. You stole the source code. No, they gave it to me.
Yeah.
So one thing you brought up I think is really great for companies is lunch and learn. It's very cheap. you get a lot of information, and you can really kind of, in my opinion, when I've done those before, is you can kind of get the like a pulse of where people are, and you can
Exactly it.
see who wants to be in security, who don't.
Everything happens after too. The
Yeah.
people who come down after, that's probably your security champions.
Mhm.
Probably the people who come down and say, "How did you? How do I get started in this?" I'm glad you asked. And I'll be honest with I'm not pimping myself here, but I do those for free.
Oh, pimp away.
Literally, I do
Yeah.
them for free. Lunch and Learn, I do it for free.
You gotta pop
And
the collar though.
any company who the anybody who calls and says, "Hey, I want to schedule lunch and learn, you come talk to my dev staff." Okay, it's community involvement as far as I'm concerned, and it
Do you,
just
and
do you at least ask for a free lunch? Come on.
yes, they have to feed me. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Actually, even if when they pay me for training, they still have to feed me. I like to eat, so it's
I also do free consulting, but I just require $10,000.
there we go. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
The other thing is that I know a lot of companies, when they talk about static code scan, for those who don't know, static code scan just looks at the raw code and looks for patterns that could be injected, or even tries to go through the tree structure of the applications and functions and look for vulnerabilities that it can be broken out of. So when a lot of companies talk about static code scan, they go, "Oh my God, that's such a big thing." We get like they don't understand. You can actually break it down to modules. You can static code scan a single module or parts of the application to then kind of like just get a feel for what's going on. Is that something you recommend a lot, or do you just say, "Nope, scan the whole thing and let's start training the model to go with"?
No. You definitely break things into pieces, and because the big problem with all static scanners, I mean, Vericode's, and despite what a lot of people complain about it, I don't care what they say. It's well done. It is. It was well developed at the beginning, and largely they've kept it pretty functional. They've added a bunch of stuff that nobody cares about, and that's fine as long as they don't get rid of the things that I do care about. They can add whatever the heck they want. No matter what you use, you're going to end up with a bunch of stuff that makes no sense because the static scanner doesn't understand the application.
Right.
It'll say, "Oh, you got an injection vulnerability." Well, no, you didn't compare it to this tier over there, which is the only place this code can literally get that information from, and all the validation's done at that tier. So the better structured your application is, the worse static scanners perform. And that's a little frustrating, to go into a place that has a very strict, solid enterprise architectural perspective, and then run a static scanner and come back with 170,000 vulnerabilities. And everyone's like, "Whoa, what's going on?" Well, that's actually because your app is that good, not because it's bad. So we need to go in and train it not to do that. And eventually you get it down to where it is. I got 2 customers on Veracode, and we've got their systems honed. And when something comes through and it says it's a high, it's actually a high. I mean, it's something that needs to be checked. Now, it might not be exploitable. It might be buried somewhere where literally nothing can touch it. And you probably shouldn't have static scanned that to begin with, but that's neither here nor there. But still, it's an exercise worth going through. You know what I mean?
So the other thing I have, so when you talk about static code scans, you talk about AppStack, you talk about all this other stuff, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
How can a development team or even a tech team, depending on your organizational structure, whatever the case is, how do you perceive them going to like the CEO or CIO or whoever they have, head of the department or head of the company, to get the funding they need? Like, what is some stuff they can do to help, give business justification to it?
So today, that isn't a problem anymore. There is no organization
Hopefully.
Well, in my experience thus far, in the past 5 years, there's just so much press about places getting popped. You don't want,
The other news.
cholesterol talking about you on the 6:30 news. And that's what the CIO will do just about anything to keep that from happening, and that sometimes means throwing money at a problem, and they're usually okay with that. Now, before it really became something that was common parlance, it seems it's very difficult to turn your brain off and think back 10 years ago. But really, 10 years ago, when somebody got things stolen, they didn't tell anybody. There were no laws in place. There was no requirements to say, hey, we've been breached and your data is sitting in some third world country that we don't have no idea what they're doing with it or whatever, or here in the US for that matter. Let's be straight. And so nobody knew. So it wasn't in the common parlance. And going to a company executive, a C-level executive, and saying, hey, listen, you're really in danger here. They'd be like, so what? I mean, no, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't care. I mean, they can't steal our stuff. Yeah, they might be able to. Well,
Who the hell are you? Who let you in here?
Yeah, pretty much. And that's the that was harder. That was way harder back then. So generally what I would do would be to working with the 3 tiers down, but still high enough level within the company to have the rights to tell me I can go and do a test. They'd let me go in and do a vulnerability assessment of something in QA, and then I would write up a report, and then they would take the report and the OWASP top 10, roll them both up together and smack the CIO with that until they got the money they wanted. Because look, here's what everybody else has, and here's what we have. Surprisingly, they're almost exactly the same. We have all of these problems. And then that would make it a lot easier to get funding to do things like Vera code and stuff like that. And also, there's a lot of people who literally do it with elbow grease and open source. A company that I set up, I was the first AppSec person on site there when they were a little itty bitty, and now they're ginormous, owned by like one of the big top 5 companies in the world or something. It's amazing. It's grown up hugely. And when I started, they had nothing. The people in charge didn't even know what I meant when I was talking about security of the applications. They're like, well, they're not going to call and ask for a password. Well, actually, they will, and that does work. But that's neither here nor there. The fact is, they don't even have to do that. They can do it just by going to your website, and the search is literally, I can download your entire database. Oh, I doubt that's actually true. Here it is. And the single output.
So Bill, that actually leads into a really great question that got asked in chat. Question for Bill S. How do we get better at countering the no way anybody would ever do that from developers?
Well, today it's much easier because obviously people are doing that. I mean, it's just look around. I mean, read any newspaper anywhere, anytime, you will find 3 stories on data theft. And almost all of them had some aspect of application security involved, even if it was initially a phishing attack to steal a credential, or a session variable. And right this minute, ransomware is on everybody's topic, and that's not really so much an application security issue as it is a network security issue, because the only real defense you have against ransomware is really good email filtering and backups. So if you get crushed, you can restore everybody's machines with a click. And I know how hard that is. For the record, like I said, I'm not a network guy, but I understand how difficult that is. I've tried to do it just here with, 4 employees and 10 machines, and I know how hard that is. But still, that's not so much an application security concern. So, but everybody's kind of learned their lesson, because it was so true for so long. And still true today. It's just that ransomware is getting more press, but it's still, there's data theft happening all the time, just the old-fashioned way. You know what I mean, right?
Oh, because like you say, old-fashioned, like are they coming in with like Tommy guns? It's just like a Bonnie and Clyde situation.
I wasn't going that far back necessarily, but yeah.
So with the development world changed within the last was it 8 years or something, wherever Scrum came out and you had product owners, project managers and stuff like that, how, I mean, it becomes harder for some developers to go to integrate some level of app security without the product team being bought in. How do you work with the product team to get them to be bought into AppSec so they can then free up cycles for developers to go back and kind of do a more code cleanup or mature code?
Yeah, that is that's a case by case basis. It really is. And that's really hard because especially in today's continuous integration environment, you get yourself in a position where I mean, I've got applications. I literally have an application right now that I've run full my full test plan for an application vulnerability analysis 4 times already this year, in 2024. I mean, and it's like, okay, guys, listen, you don't need to run a full scale test every time you change 7 lines of code. You don't have to do that. But everyone's so paranoid, especially if there's regulatory considerations, that it's so nobody can really keep up with that. And the way the product owners push back is by moving fast and like, hey, we need a vulnerability assessment on this. Can you have it due tomorrow? And of course, the answer is no, because I've got 3 ahead of you, and it takes several days.
But I really need it.
I mean, no, you got to build this into your product play a little bit.
Yeah, you got to create some like tech debt and stuff, and it's kind of shoehorn it in, so that way you can account for things like this, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah, because then the other issue that always goes hand in hand to AppSec is regulatory compliance and understanding what type of data you have in your system, how is it being utilized, what layer classification is it,
Red, yellow, and green data. Yeah, and now the federal in the U.S. the federal government is really putting a step in. I don't know if you guys saw, but the federal government's now saying, hey, if you want to write code for a federal project, it must use a memory safe language. So even if
JavaScript all the way,
if you want to write device level software, you have to write it in Rust, not C++, because I mean, and it's thrown a lot of people in dev space that work in that area for a real loop. Like, there's no tools in Rust to do what I want to do, or any of the other memory safe languages, especially this close to the metal. How am I going to do this? Well, be the change you want to see in the world, man. That's the only answer I got for you. I'm sorry. You gotta. If you build it, you can open source it. Please do, so the rest of us can use it.
Go back, Bill. Go back. We got like 9 minutes left, but I want to do one more question. Think back 20 years ago.
2-hour show today. Just surprise everybody.
Think back 20 years ago when you were doing this stuff, or however long it's been. How long have you been doing this for?
The security stuff or the computer stuff?
The computer stuff. Or I'm sorry, the security stuff.
It would be about 15 years.
Okay, well, fine. Go back 15 years then.
Okay, I'm going back 15 years.
Pedantic shit. Go back 15 years. What did you see then that you were, if there is anything, and I guarantee that there is, what did you see then that's still not fixed now? Or not fixed that the way that it should be, in the traditional sense of this is solved versus like patchworked? Maybe not. Like, is there anything you were most shocked about that you saw 15 years ago that you might still see around today?
I would have been shocked then, but I'm not shocked now that I know what I know. But and the answer probably isn't what you think. We always had problems in security with third-party component use. 15 years ago, there was no NPM, or wasn't in common use. There wasn't NuGet. I mean, we didn't have that level of third-party integration into our. There wasn't any continuous integration. I mean, people were still trying to figure out how to spell Scrum and stuff back then. But back then, even 15 years ago, you see the writing on the wall that the fact that the majority of software is written on top, the actual custom code is only about 10% of the project. And a whole lot of the security vulnerabilities relate to the other 90% that you have no control over at all, or very little. And back then you had none at all. And you had to account for that in your own code. You had to account for the weaknesses in the code you were sitting on. Let me give you an example real quick that actually I talked about back then. It might have even been before that 15-year gap you gave me. When .NET first came out, and actually for quite a while afterwards, the system binaries for the .NET components were signed by Microsoft, but you would have to check the signature in your code in order to validate you actually were running the right library. And no one did that because no one's going to change the system.string, module or, DLL. And that's not ever going to happen. And then it did. And all of a sudden it was, I'm not specifically system.string, but that problem occurred where checking the signatures became important. So Microsoft built things in to their development frameworks to do that work automatically, so that you didn't have to depend on developers to do the work. And that, so even so we're talking the beginning of .NET, whenever the heck that was. Then it was really obvious. Even before that, and I look back now, I've got a big long talk on this, well, a normal size talk, but I've got a talk on this where I talk about the supply chain and what it looked like way back a long time ago. I mean, way back a long time ago, we were typing in I'm talking in the 80s here, we're typing in our programs from a magazine, right? And if the person in the magazine wrote a security flaw in, you acquired it by typing it in, you know what I mean? And so that supply chain has always been a problem, is still a problem today, and will continue to be a problem for the foreseeable future. And that's the one thing that surprises me, that we didn't give it more attention when we should have. And now it's really, really an issue. And once again, you made a comment, Dev, about the tech debt. Loading up on that tech debt. This is a good example of that. The tech debt we've rolled in by, every time the developer, presses Control B or whatever. I mean, that's probably bypassed by now, but compiles their system. One of the things it does is doing, an npm pull and gets everything, or whatever it is in npm, I forget, npm whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And it refreshes everything from GitHub or wherever the packages are, and you don't even know what version you're pulling in, whether it's somebody's given up on it and it's been taken over by a bad guy. Unless you're literally going and looking for it, you don't know. And GitHub's doing a pretty good job at trying to mitigate that as best they can on their end. But still, it's a huge lift, and I'm glad I don't have to deal with it as a software architect anymore.
Yeah, because
everything
wasn't it 2 years ago? CodeCov got attacked, and someone modified their code, and then that touched so many repos, many repos.
Yep,
I had to be go and clean up and do code rewrites and all kinds of stuff, because I forgot what the supply chain attack. I think it was just taking your environmental variables and sending it to a URL for it to be uploaded.
Yep.
But it was really nasty, and no one knew about it for months. So.
Yeah, everything's broken. Everything's going to be fixed. That's how good in the episode.
No. It's not. No. It really is getting so much better. It really is. It really. I mean, everyone's doing the right thing right now, and we've just got a ways to go. I mean, you think about it. The attackers are changing they're changing their tune on a very regular basis as to what becomes a viable attack, and the fact that they're having to do that means that we're doing the right thing. That they're having to,
little scamps.
It's all coming down to just sending really, really convincing phishing emails and having people click a link.
I'm still amazed how many misspellings and shit that there are, and they're like, come on, try harder.
I just found one. One of the customers I was talking about before, they're they have a domain that ends in co, not .co. The word,
Sure,
the
yeah,
second level domain ends in co, and it's so easy to type com because you just, even though you're going to press the dot button and type com too, and that leads you to a phishing site. If you add that m and then put .com, it's somebody else, a bad guy owns that domain.
Hold on, I'm taking notes.
Yeah, there's actually tools.
It's
There's
time to
tools
pop
out
that
there
here.
to go ahead and scan a domain and find mistypes or
I told
I
them
think
about
that's
that.
actually what it's called, mistypes or misspell, whatever domains. And we go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say I would love to talk about this more, but of all the days I don't want to have a hard stop. I have one today, because you actually did say something, Bill. We're gonna have you back on because I would love to hear your answer. You had said something, and I made a mental note of it when you were saying I like when people do actual red teaming, and I want your definition of what actual red teaming is, but not right now. They'll save that for later.
Nope.
Because I always like to have spicy takes about what red teamers actually are. What we like to do.
I've got my fair share of spicy takes.
Well, then we're going to have you back on.
Okay.
But what we like to do at the very end, Bill, how was your week? We like to say if we have anything to celebrate for the week, if you had something good go bad, or on my favorite side, if you had something absolutely shit-fire dumpster happen, I want to hear that too. What happened to you this week, Bill?
Well, you said it before the show. This week's been a long month. Yeah.
It's been a very long
Last
month.
several weeks been like that for me. But I got to say, this week I discovered on a test SQL injection on a get parameter. And after having a lengthy meeting with a whole lot of people telling me that you can't have SQL injection on a get parameter, I finally proved it to them, and they fixed it the next day.
Hell
And
yeah.
it's gone.
Take that.
So-
Suck it, naysayers.
Yeah.
All right. Other than that,
Win.
I normally go around the room, but I literally don't have time. So, and I usually care about what Jake's answer is, and I never care about Dev. So we're hitting about even. Bill, thank you so much. Like, you're one of my favorite guests so far because you just talk and you say interesting shit, and like
I just talk.
Yeah, as somebody, I think it was Accidental Sizzo said in our chat, I love hearing these old origin stories and stuff like that. So very engaging. Thank you for being on. We're going to ask you back if that's all right with you.
Pleasure.
Yeah, going to have you back on. So for everybody else, goddamn, we love doing this. We do it every week. Sometimes I'm here, sometimes I'm not, but one of the guys is always here. Occasionally we're all like, all right, you know what? Not today.
Someone's here.
Yeah, somebody's
We don't
usually
know.
here. But I love this. I love, and everybody who comes to the chat, all the regular, like, you guys are awesome. Matt showed up, Bill's here, Bats is here. But yes, thank you to everybody. We have a new blog out. Jake just wrote it. It's on nested groups and why they suck and why you're dumb for using them. And he just berates you for about 4 pages. So go to hub.trimarksecurity.com and stop screwing up your nested groupings. I was going to announce our webcast for next week, but I don't have the language in front of me. But Scott's doing a thing on top 10 Azure Entra screw ups. Yeah. So we're going to be doing that in just a few weeks, but I'll get that all announced on Mondays because nobody listens to us on Fridays. Other than that, hub.trimarksecurity.com, trimarksecurity.com. We do Active Directory, we do VMware assessments, and we do Microsoft Cloud assessments, and we're pretty goddamn good at it. What was that, Bill?
And you do podcasts.
And we do, doing, it's a very relative, objective,
Loose
and
definition.
low bar.
We do something similar to a podcast.
We do something. But until next week, my friends, we will see you then. And thank you for being here.